The call came at 11:47 on a Wednesday morning, and Marcus Thorne's hand froze on the wrench like the whole garage had suddenly gone quiet. Even though the air compressor was still coughing in the corner and Garrett Flynn was revving a Harley near the open bay door, everything else fell away the moment Marcus saw that number on his phone screen. Oakwood Elementary. He answered with a smile still tucked into his beard because he thought maybe Rosie had forgotten her lunch again, or needed permission for a field trip, or wanted him to bring the blue hoodie she always claimed was warmer than every other hoodie in the world. But his daughter's voice was too small. Not crying, not dramatic, just small in the way a child sounds when she is trying very hard to be brave, because she already knows the adults might not understand. Marcus wiped his oil-darkened fingers on a rag and turned away from the noise of the garage. "Rosie, where are you right now?" "In the office," she whispered. "Mrs. Morrison is with me." That helped him breathe, but only halfway. "Good. Stay there. Don't go back outside. Tell me exactly what happened." On the other end of the line, he heard the faint buzz of fluorescent lights, the muffled sound of kids laughing somewhere far down a hallway, and then Rosie breathing in the careful rhythm he had taught her for thunderstorms. "The man from the playground is back," she said. "The one by the fence?" Marcus asked, and the fact that he already knew what she meant made something cold settle behind his ribs. 2 days earlier, Rosie had mentioned a man standing near the school playground. During recess, a man in a gray baseball cap who didn't wave at any teachers and didn't seem to have a kid with him. Marcus had asked if she felt unsafe, and she had shrugged the way 8-year-olds do when they are trying to decide whether a grown-up problem is really a problem. Yesterday, she said he was there again. Marcus had told her she did the right thing by noticing. He told her to stay near her teacher and never go to the fence. He told himself not to overreact. Now the third day had arrived. "He said you sent him to pick me up," Rosie whispered. The rag slipped from Marcus's hand and landed silently on the concrete floor. Across the garage, Garrett killed the Harley's engine. Maybe because he heard the change in Marcus's breathing. Maybe because every man who had ever loved somebody knew that kind of silence. Marcus let out a slow breath, locking every angry thought behind a door before it could step into his voice. Rosie did not need fear from him. She needed a father. "Listen to me, sweetheart," he said. "You did everything right. You went inside. You told Mrs. Morrison. You called me. I am proud of you." A tiny sound came through the phone. Not quite a sob, more like a child letting go of air she had been holding too long. "I didn't know if I was making trouble." Marcus looked at the black leather vest hanging beside the workbench, the one most people saw before they saw the man wearing it. To strangers, he was Marcus Thorne. Broad shoulders, scarred knuckles, iron gray beard, an iron rider's patch, and a motorcycle loud enough to make curtains twitch 3 blocks away. To Rosie, he was the man who cut the crusts off toast checked under the bed for monsters and never broke a promise after bedtime. "You are not making trouble," he said. "You are telling the truth before trouble gets worse. Hand the phone to Mrs. Morrison and stay where she can see you." There was a rustle. Then Claire Morrison's voice came on calm but strained. "Mr. Thorne, Rosie is safe in the office. I'm with her." "Lock the playground doors," Marcus said. "Tell the principal to check the cameras, and nobody releases my daughter to anyone but me." A pause. "Already done," Mrs. Morrison replied. And in that moment, Marcus heard something rare and precious in an adult's voice. She believed his child. Marcus grabbed his keys from the pegboard, the metal cold against his palm. Outside, the afternoon sun lay bright over the small Ohio town, the kind of day that made danger feel impossible. But as he swung onto his Harley and the engine rolled awake beneath him, one thought beat louder than the pipes, louder than his pulse, louder than every mile between the garage and Oakwood Elementary. On the third day, the man at the playground had stopped watching and started pretending he belonged. 5:30 in the morning came the same way it always did, with light just beginning to bleed through the curtains and the house still holding the quiet of the night before. Marcus Thorne woke before the alarm, the way he had for years, the way men who carry a responsibility wake, when their bodies know rest is a luxury, but routine is survival. He sat up on the edge of the bed and looked at the photograph on the nightstand. Jennifer. 3 years gone, but the ache still sat in his chest like a stone he had learned to carry without letting it pull him under. She smiled out at him from a summer afternoon that felt both yesterday and a lifetime ago, her hair catching sunlight, her hand resting on a belly that would become rosy 6 months later. Marcus ran a hand over his face, feeling the rough texture of his beard, the tiredness in his bones that had nothing to do with sleep and everything to do with being both mother and father to an 8-year-old girl who deserved better than half of anything. But she never complained. Rosie never asked why other kids had two parents at school concerts or why her lunch notes came in as blocky handwriting instead of her mother's looping script. She just loved him the way children love without conditions, without keeping score. He stood and dressed in the dim light, jeans worn soft at the knees, a flannel shirt that had seen 1,000 mornings just like this one, boots that knew the shape of his feet better than any other pair he'd ever owned. The leather vest came last heavy with patches, in memories the Iron Rider's emblem across the back like a second skin. Downstairs, he moved through the kitchen with the practiced efficiency of a man who had done this alone long enough to make it look easy. Coffee brewing, eggs cracking into a pan, bread in the toaster crusts already marked for removal because Rosie had decided at age 4 that crusts were the bad part, and Marcus had never seen a reason to argue. He packed her lunch with the same care he gave to rebuilding an engine. Sandwich cut into triangles, apple slices in a small container, a juice box, a note on a folded napkin that said, "You're going to do great today. Bug, love Daddy." The unicorn lunchbox sat ready on the counter, bright pink and covered in stickers Rosie had applied with the seriousness of an artist finishing a masterpiece. By 6:15, Marcus heard the soft pad of feet on the stairs. Rosie appeared in the kitchen doorway, still in her pajamas, dark hair tangled from sleep, clutching the stuffed bear she'd had since she was 2. She was small for 8, all long limbs and serious brown eyes that seemed to notice everything, the kind of kid who asked questions that made adults stop and think before answering. "Morning, Daddy," she said, her voice still rough with sleep. "Morning, sweetheart. You sleep okay?" She nodded and climbed into her chair at the table, the bear sitting in the chair beside her, like an invisible friend made visible. Marcus set a plate in front of her. Scrambled eggs toast without crusts, 3 strips of bacon arranged like a smile. "You didn't have to do the smiley face," Rosie said, but she was grinning as she said it. "I know, but I did anyway." They ate together in comfortable silence, the kind that comes when two people know each other well enough that words are optional. The morning light grew stronger through the window, turning the kitchen golden, and for a few minutes the world was just a father and daughter and breakfast before the day began. At 7, Rosie went upstairs to get dressed while Marcus cleaned the kitchen. He heard her moving around above him, opening drawers, talking to herself in the way kids do when they think no one is listening. When she came back down, she was wearing jeans and a purple shirt with a sparkly star on the front. Her hair pulled back in a ponytail that Marcus had learned to manage with the help of several YouTube tutorials and a lot of patience. "Backpack ready?" he asked. She held it up, pink covered in patches and pins, and hanging from the front zipper was a name tag bright yellow with glittery letters that spelled out Rosalie Thorne in proud bold print. Marcus looked at it for a moment longer than necessary. They'd bought that tag together at Target at the start of the school year. Rosie had picked the yellow because it reminded her of sunshine, and she'd been so excited to clip it on to have something that announced to the world exactly who she was. Back then it had seemed harmless, sweet even. Now standing in the morning light of his kitchen, Marcus felt the faintest unease, like a whisper he couldn't quite hear. But he pushed it aside. He was a father, not a fortune teller. And this was Rosie's world, the one where name tags and unicorn lunchboxes and sparkly stars on purple shirts were exactly the kind of things that made her smile. "Let's roll," he said. The Harley sat in the driveway, black chrome gleaming in the morning sun. Marcus had inherited the bike from his father, who'd ridden it until the day he couldn't anymore, and now it was his turn to keep the engine alive. Rosie climbed on behind him, her small arms wrapping around his waist, her helmet bright pink with a unicorn decal already buckled under her chin. She fit there like she'd been born to ride, and Marcus never started the engine until he felt her squeeze him twice, their signal that she was ready. Two squeezes came. He kicked the Harley to life, and they rolled out of the driveway and into the streets of Oakwood. The town was waking up around them, people stepping out to grab newspapers, a jogger on the sidewalk, a dog barking from a fenced yard. The world going about its business the way it always did, predictable and small and safe in the way small towns pretend to be. Marcus knew better than to believe in safe. He had grown up in a town like this, in a house where his parents worked too much and noticed too little, where danger wore a friendly face and no one thought to ask the hard questions until it was too late. He'd learned young that the world didn't owe you safety just because you were a kid, just because you followed the rules. He'd learned it the hard way. 24 years ago, when Marcus was 14 and his sister Sophia was 7, she'd come to him with a problem. There was a man, she said, a man who stood near the bus stop, a man who smiled at her in a way that made her stomach feel funny, a man who seemed to always be there when she walked home from school. Marcus, 14 and too young to understand the weight of what she was saying, had brushed it off. Adults stand places, he'd told her. You're imagining things. Stop being so scared all the time. 3 days later, Sophia disappeared. For 46 minutes, Marcus's world became a locked room with no windows and no air. His mother screamed into the phone with the police. His father drove the streets until the car overheated. And Marcus, 14 years old and drowning in guilt, ran the route to school and back until his lungs burned and his legs gave out. They found Sophia at a convenience store 3 miles away, scared and crying but physically unharmed. A clerk had noticed her ask the right questions, called the right people. Everyone said they were lucky, but luck hadn't erased what came after. Sophia stopped sleeping with the lights off. She stopped walking to the bus alone. She stopped trusting Marcus the way little sisters are supposed to trust big brothers. And Marcus, 14 years old and carrying a weight too heavy for his shoulders, learned that some mistakes don't get second chances. Now, 24 years later, riding through the streets of Oakwood with his own daughter holding tight to his back, Marcus carried that memory like a scar that never quite healed. He thought about it every time Rosie said something felt wrong, every time she hesitated before getting out of the truck, every time she looked at him with those serious brown eyes and asked if he believed her. He always did, because this time he wasn't going to be the reason a child's voice went unheard. They pulled into the drop-off lane at Oakwood Elementary just before 7:30. The school was a low red brick building surrounded by maples and a playground painted in colors so bright they seemed almost defiant. Kids poured out of cars and buses, backpacks, bouncing voices, loud with the kind of energy that comes from being young and convinced the day belongs to you. Rosie climbed off the Harley and pulled off her helmet, her ponytail bouncing free. She handed the helmet to Marcus, who clipped it to the bike. "Have a good day," he said. She smiled up at him, gap-toothed and fearless. "You too, Daddy." Then she turned and ran toward the school, her pink backpack bouncing, the yellow name tag catching the morning light like a little flag announcing her to the world. Marcus watched her go the way he always did until she disappeared through the front doors. Only then did he start the Harley and pull away, the engine rumbling beneath him, steady and sure. He didn't know it yet, but in 3 days everything would change. Monday started the way most Mondays did, slow and steady, with the smell of oil and gasoline filling the garage, and the sound of classic rock crackling through the old radio perched on the workbench. Thorne's Auto Repair had been in the family for 30 years, passed down from Marcus's father, a man who believed that if you couldn't fix something with your hands, it probably wasn't worth fixing. Marcus had inherited more than the garage. He'd inherited the philosophy, the tools, the customers who still called him Young Thorne, even though he was pushing 40 and his beard had gone gray at the edges. Garrett Flynn was already elbow deep in the engine of a Chevy Silverado, when Marcus walked in, coffee in hand, boots crunching over the concrete floor. "Morning," Garrett said without looking up. "Morning, what's the damage?" "Blown head gasket. Owner says it just started overheating last week." "They always say that." Garrett grinned. He was 26, lean and wiry, with the kind of energy that came from being young enough to believe hard work would solve anything. He joined the Iron Riders 6 months ago, right after his divorce, and Marcus had taken him under his wing, the way older brothers do when they see a younger version of themselves stumbling through the wreckage of a life that didn't turn out the way it was supposed to. The two of them worked in companionable silence for most of the morning, the rhythm of wrenches and engines and the low hum of the radio filling the space between words. The Iron Riders weren't a gang, not in the way people thought when they saw the patches and the bikes. They were a brotherhood, a collection of men who'd found family in the roar of engines and the open road men, who understood that loyalty wasn't something you talked about, it was something you lived. Marcus had been a rider for 15 years, long enough to know that the leather and the noise were just window dressing. What mattered was showing up when someone needed you. What mattered was keeping your word. At 11:30, Marcus's phone buzzed. He wiped his hands on a rag and checked the screen. A text from Rosie's school. "Reminder, pickup procedures require ID and authorization. Thank you for keeping our students safe." Standard stuff. The kind of automated message every parent got. Marcus deleted it and went back to work. He didn't know that at that exact moment, Rosie was standing on the playground at Oakwood Elementary jumping rope with her best friend, Maddie Walsh, when she saw the man for the first time. He was standing outside the fence near the big oak tree that marked the edge of the school property. Gray baseball cap pulled low, dark jacket, brown shoes, one of them split at the toe like a mouth frozen mid-smile. Rosie noticed him because noticing was what she did. She noticed when her teacher wore the same earrings 2 days in a row. She noticed when the classroom fish swam slower than usual. She noticed everything the way some kids just do, like the world was a puzzle and every detail mattered. The man wasn't doing anything wrong. Not exactly. He was just standing there, phone pressed to his ear, like he was waiting for someone. But something about the way he stood, the way he kept turning his head when the teachers turned theirs, made Rosie's stomach tighten in a way she didn't have words for yet. She kept jumping rope, kept playing, kept an eye on the fence. By the time the bell rang and the kids lined up to go back inside, the man was gone. That afternoon when Marcus picked Rosie up from school, she was quiet on the ride home. Not upset, just thoughtful the way she got when something was turning over in her mind. "How was your day?" Marcus asked as they rolled up to a stoplight. "Good," she said. Then after a pause, "Daddy, I saw a man at the playground today." Marcus felt something shift in his chest, subtle as a gear clicking into place. "What kind of man?" "Just a man. He was standing by the fence. He had a gray hat and brown shoes. One of the shoes was ripped at the front like it had a mouth." Marcus glanced back at her in the rearview mirror. She wasn't scared, just reporting facts the way she might describe a bird she had seen or a cloud that looked like a dinosaur. "Was he talking to anyone?" "No, he had his phone up like this." She held her hand to her ear. "But I don't think he was really talking. He kept looking at the playground." The light turned green. Marcus eased the Harley forward, his mind already working through possibilities. "Did he come near you?" "No, he stayed outside the fence." "Did you tell Mrs. Morrison?" Rosie hesitated. "No, I didn't know if I should. He wasn't doing anything bad." Marcus pulled into their driveway and killed the engine. He turned to face her, his voice gentle but firm. "Rosie, if something feels wrong, you tell a grown-up. Even if the person isn't doing anything bad yet. Even if you're not sure. Do you understand?" She nodded. "Did it feel wrong?" She thought about it, her face serious. "A little," she admitted. "But maybe I was just being silly." "You're not silly. You're smart, and smart people pay attention." He climbed off the bike and helped her down. "If you see him again tomorrow, you find Mrs. Morrison right away, okay?" "Okay, Daddy." That night, after Rosie had gone to bed, Marcus sat at the kitchen table with his laptop open, searching for articles about school safety, stranger danger, things he thought he already knew, but wanted to see in writing, like reading the words would make the unease in his chest go away. He found statistics about predators who targeted schools. He found advice about teaching kids to trust their instincts. He found stories that made his stomach turn and his hands curl into fists. At midnight, he shut the laptop and sat in the dark thinking about Sophia, thinking about 46 minutes, thinking about all the ways the world could go wrong when adults didn't listen. He pulled out his phone and texted Deputy Richard Hayes, an old friend from high school, who'd gone into law enforcement while Marcus had gone into engines. "Hey, got a question about school safety. Can I call you tomorrow?" The response came 2 minutes later. "Sure, everything okay?" Marcus stared at the screen. "Yeah, just being cautious." "Good. Call me anytime." Marcus set the phone down and went upstairs. He checked on Rosie the way he did every night, standing in her doorway, watching the rise and fall of her breathing, the way her small hand curled around the edge of her blanket. She was safe. She was home. She was his whole world, and he would do anything, anything to keep it that way. Tuesday came with clouds hanging low and heavy, the kind of sky that threatened rain, but never quite delivered. Marcus woke before dawn again, the same routine, the same coffee, the same silence of a house that had learned to function around the shape of an absence. He made breakfast, packed Rosie's lunch, checked her backpack to make sure she had everything she needed. The yellow name tag swung from the zipper, bright and cheerful, and Marcus paused, his hand hovering over it. He thought about taking it off, thought about tucking it inside where strangers couldn't see it. But then Rosie came downstairs, sleepy-eyed and smiling, and he couldn't bring himself to take away something that made her feel like she belonged. "Ready for school?" he asked. "Ready, Daddy." They rode through town 15 minutes earlier than usual. Marcus told himself it was because he wanted to beat the traffic, but the truth was simpler and harder to admit. He wanted to see the playground. He wanted to see if the man would be there again. He dropped Rosie off at the front entrance and watched her run inside, backpack bouncing. Then he circled around to the far side of the building, to the street that ran parallel to the playground fence. Nothing. Just an empty street, a few parked cars, the big oak tree standing quiet and still. Marcus told himself he was being paranoid, told himself one sighting didn't mean anything, told himself that fear was a poor substitute for facts. But he also remembered Sophia's voice, small and scared, saying, "He's there again, Marcus. I'm not making it up." And he remembered not believing her. At 11:45, while Marcus was changing the oil on a Honda Accord, Rosie was out on the playground with her class, the sky still gray, but the air warm enough that the kids didn't need jackets. She was in the middle of a game of four square when she saw him. Same gray hat, same brown shoes with the split toe. Same spot by the fence just outside school property, like he'd been placed there by someone who understood exactly where the line was. This time he wasn't pretending to talk on the phone. He was just standing there, hands in his pockets, watching. Rosie felt her stomach drop the way it does when you miss a step on the stairs. She looked around for Mrs. Morrison, but her teacher was on the far side of the playground, breaking up an argument between two boys, who both claimed they'd been tagged out first. Rosie turned back to the fence. The man lifted his hand. Not a wave, not exactly. Just two fingers raised casual, like he was acknowledging someone he knew. And he was looking right at her. Rosie's heart started to pound. She didn't wave back. She didn't move. She just stood there, frozen in the middle of the four-square court, while the other kids yelled at her to play the ball. Then the man lowered his hand and turned away, walking slowly down the service road until he disappeared around the corner of the building. Rosie ran straight to Mrs. Morrison. "Mrs. Morrison! Mrs. Morrison! The man is here again." Claire Morrison was 42 years old, a good teacher with a kind heart, and the patience of someone who'd spent 2 decades managing classrooms full of 8-year-olds. She turned from the two boys, her face already shifting into the expression adults use when a child is upset but they're not sure why. What man, sweetie? The man by the fence. The one I saw yesterday. He was here again. He waved at me. Mrs. Morrison looked toward the fence. Empty now, just the oak tree and the street beyond. Are you sure he waved at you, Rosie? Sometimes people wave at lots of people. He was looking at me. Okay, well, if you see him again, you stay close to me, all right? And if he tries to talk to you, you come get me right away. Rosie nodded, but something inside her felt heavy like a door closing. Mrs. Morrison believed her, sort of, but not enough to check. Not enough to walk to the fence and look for herself. That afternoon, Marcus picked Rosie up and immediately saw it in her face. The tightness around her eyes, the way she held her backpack a little closer. What happened? He asked. He was there again. Marcus felt the cold thing in his chest expand, spreading through his ribs like frost. The man from yesterday. Yes, same hat, same shoes. He waved at me, Daddy. Just 2 fingers like this. She held up 2 fingers showing him. I told Mrs. Morrison, but she said maybe he waved at lots of people. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his hands tight on the handlebars. Did Mrs. Morrison go check? Rosie shook her head. No. She said if he comes back, I should stay close to her. Marcus didn't say anything. He couldn't not yet not with Rosie sitting behind him, waiting for him to tell her what to do. So he just nodded and started the bike and took them home. And the whole way his mind was turning over the same question again and again. What if she's right? What if this isn't nothing? That night after dinner after homework, after Rosie had brushed her teeth and climbed into bed with her stuffed bear tucked under one arm, Marcus sat on the edge of her mattress and looked at his daughter in the glow of her nightlight. Sweetheart, he said, I want to tell you a story about your Aunt Sophia. Rosie's eyes widened. She loved stories, especially ones about family, about people who shared her blood and her name. Aunt Sophia in Chicago. That's right. When I was 14 years old, your Aunt Sophia was 7, and one day she came to me and said there was a man following her, a man who stood near the bus stop, a man who smiled at her in a way that made her feel scared. Rosie was very still, now listening the way children listen when they sense a story is about to teach them something important. What did you do, Daddy? Marcus took a breath. I didn't believe her. I told her she was imagining things. I told her to stop being so scared all the time. Why, because I was 14 and I thought I knew everything, and I didn't want to believe that something bad could happen in our town to someone I loved. What happened? 3 days later, Aunt Sophia got lost. For 46 minutes, we didn't know where she was. It was the worst 46 minutes of my life. We found her at a store a few miles away. She was okay, but she was scared. And she didn't trust me anymore because I hadn't listened when she needed me to. Rosie's eyes were shining now, not with tears, but with understanding. Is Aunt Sophia still mad at you? Not mad exactly, but it took a long time for her to forgive me. And I don't blame her. I should have believed her the first time. Marcus reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind Rosie's ear. I'm telling you this because I want you to know something. If you say you saw a man at the playground, I believe you. If you say he waved at you, I believe you. And if you say something feels wrong, I believe you. Do you understand? Rosie nodded, her voice small but clear. Do you think he'll come back tomorrow? I don't know, but if he does, you don't wait. You don't wonder if you're being silly. You find Mrs. Morrison and you call me. Right away. Even if it's the middle of the school day. You call me. Okay, Daddy. Marcus leaned down and kissed her forehead. I love you, Rosie. I love you too. He turned off the light and closed the door halfway the way she liked it, and stood in the hallway for a long moment listening to the sound of her breathing, evening out as she drifted towards sleep. Then he went downstairs, pulled out his phone, and called Richard Hayes. Hayes picked up on the second ring. Marcus, what's going on? I need your advice on something, off the record. There was a pause, and Marcus could almost hear his friend shifting gears, moving from casual to professional. I'm listening. Marcus told him everything. The man at the fence, the gray cap and the brown shoes, the fact that he'd been there 2 days in a row, the wave. When he finished, Hayes was quiet for a moment. Has he approached her? No, he stays outside the fence. Has he said anything to her? Not that she's heard. And the school knows. Rosie told her teacher. The teacher told her to stay close. Hayes sighed. Look, Marcus, I hear you. And I'm not saying your daughter is wrong, but at one guy standing near a school for 2 days, that's not enough for me to do anything official. Could be a parent waiting for a kid. Could be someone lost. Could be nothing. Could be something. Yeah, it could. So here's what I'll tell you. If he shows up again tomorrow, call me. Don't wait. Call me and I'll swing by the school, ask some questions. If it's nothing, no harm done. If it's something, we'll handle it. Marcus felt the tightness in his chest ease just a little. Thanks, Rich. That's what I'm here for. And Marcus, for what it's worth, I'm glad you're taking this seriously. Most parents don't listen when their kids say something feels wrong. I know. I learned that the hard way. After he hung up, Marcus stood in the kitchen, staring out the window into the dark backyard. Somewhere out there, the world kept turning, indifferent to fear, indifferent to love, indifferent to the fact that a man with a gray cap and broken shoes might be circling an elementary school for reasons no one could name yet. But Marcus wasn't indifferent. He was a father, and that meant he didn't get the luxury of hoping for the best. He had to prepare for the worst. Wednesday morning came too fast and too slow, at the same time the hours crawling and racing, depending on whether Marcus was checking the clock or trying not to. He barely slept. Every time he shut his eyes, he saw Rosie standing on a playground and a man with a split-toed shoe standing just outside the fence watching. He got up at 5, made coffee he didn't drink, and paced the kitchen until the sky started to lighten. By 6, he was making breakfast. By 6:30, Rosie was awake. By 7, they were out the door. You're early, Daddy, Rosie said as they pulled into the school parking lot. I know. Thought we'd beat the rush. He walked her to the front entrance, something he didn't usually do, and crouched down so they were eye to eye. Remember what we talked about? If I see him, I find Mrs. Morrison and I call you. Right away, you don't wait. You don't wonder if you're being silly. You call. She nodded, serious and small, and Marcus felt his heart twist in his chest. I will, Daddy. I love you. I love you too. She turned and walked through the doors, her pink backpack bouncing the yellow name tag, catching the morning sun. Marcus stood there until she disappeared around a corner, and then he stood there a little longer, like staying and would somehow keep her safer. Finally, he got back on the Harley and rode to the garage, but he couldn't focus. Garrett noticed immediately. You all right, man? Yeah, just got a lot on my mind. Rosie okay? She's fine, just some stuff at school. Garrett nodded and didn't push, which Marcus appreciated. There were some things you talked about and some things you carried alone, and right now Marcus wasn't sure which category this fell into. At 11:30, his phone rang. Not a text, a call from Oakwood Elementary. Marcus's heart stopped, then restarted at double speed. He grabbed the phone and answered before the second ring. Hello. There was a pause just long enough for Marcus to imagine every terrible possibility, and then he heard Rosie's voice. Small, shaking, trying so hard to be brave. Daddy, he's here again. The garage fell away. The noise, the tools, the world beyond the phone, all of it disappeared until there was nothing but his daughter's voice and the cold spreading through his veins like ice water. Where are you, Rosie? I'm in the office with Mrs. Morrison. Good, that's good. Stay there. Don't go outside. Tell me what happened. He heard her take a breath, the same deep breath he'd taught her for thunderstorms and bad dreams. He came back to the fence, and this time he said something. Marcus's hand tightened on the phone. What did he say? He said, Rosalie, your daddy sent me to pick you up. Everything stopped. Marcus heard his own breathing loud and ragged in his ears. He heard the faint hum of the fluorescent lights above him. He heard Garrett's footsteps moving closer, sensing something was wrong. But you never call me Rosalie when you send someone. Rosie continued, her voice stronger now, like saying it out loud made her more certain. You call me Rosie, or sweetheart, never Rosalie. And there it was. A nickname had become a locked door the stranger didn't know how to open. Marcus forced himself to breathe, to think, to be the father his daughter needed him to be right now. Rosie, listen to me. You did everything exactly right. You went inside. You told Mrs. Morrison. You called me. I am so proud of you. Am I in trouble? No, you are not in trouble. You are the smartest, bravest kid I know. Now hand the phone to Mrs. Morrison, okay? And stay right there. I'm coming. There was a rustling sound, and then Mrs. Morrison's voice, tight with something Marcus recognized as fear barely held in check. Mr. Thorne, is she safe? Yes, she's with me in the office. The front doors are locked. Good. Call the principal. Check the cameras. And do not let anyone take my daughter unless I am standing right there. Do you understand? Yes, I understand. I'm 12 minutes away. He hung up, grabbed his keys, and was halfway to the Harley before Garrett caught up with him. Marcus, what's going on? Someone tried to pick up Rosie, said I sent him. Garrett's face went white. You want me to come with you? Marcus stopped, turned, and looked at the younger man. For a moment, he wanted to say yes. Wanted to bring the whole brotherhood, every rider who would drop everything and ride with him. Wanted to show up at that school with enough noise and leather and barely controlled fury that whoever had tried to touch his daughter would know exactly what kind of mistake they'd made. But Rosie was in that building. Kids were in that building. And fear, even righteous fear, had a way of spreading. No, Marcus said. Stay here. If I need you, I'll call. He didn't wait for a response. He swung onto the Harley, kicked it to life, and roared out of the garage, the engine loud enough to rattle windows, his mind already racing ahead to the school, to his daughter, to the man who had looked at an 8-year-old girl and thought he could take her. The streets of Oakwood blurred past, stoplights, crosswalks, people turning to stare at the biker flying through town like the devil himself was on his heels. Marcus didn't care. All he cared about was getting to Rosie, getting there before anyone could tell him it was too late, getting there before the 46 minutes started counting down again. He made it in 10. He parked the Harley across from the front entrance, killed the engine, and walked toward the school, his boots heavy on the pavement, his heart pounding so hard it hurt. Inside the office, he could see movement through the glass, people talking, a woman at the desk, and there in a blue plastic chair, her pink backpack at her feet, was Rosie. She saw him at the same moment he saw her. Her face, which had been holding itself together with all the strength an 8-year-old could manage, finally crumpled. Not into tears, but into relief so pure it made Marcus's throat close. He pushed through the door and crossed the office in 3 strides, dropping to one knee in front of her chair so they were eye to eye. Hey, sweetheart, Daddy's here. And Rosie, small and brave and scared, leaned forward into his arms and held on like he was the only solid thing left in a world that had just proven it could be dangerous. Marcus held her and breathed and felt the weight of every choice he'd made in the last 3 days settle over him like a cloak. He'd listened, he'd believed, he'd acted, and because of that, his daughter was safe. But the man who tried to take her was still out there, and this wasn't over. Marcus held Rosie for as long as she needed his hand, steady on her back, his voice low and calm, even though everything inside him was screaming. The office around them had gone quiet in that specific way that happens when adults suddenly realize a child is in real danger, not the scraped knee kind or the forgotten homework kind, but the kind that makes every parent's worst nightmare feel close enough to touch. Claire Morrison stood a few feet away, her hands twisted together, her face pale. She looked like she wanted to say something, wanted to apologize or explain, but Marcus wasn't ready to hear it yet. Right now, his world had narrowed to the weight of his daughter in his arms, and the fact that she was here, she was safe, she was breathing. I remembered, Daddy, Rosie whispered against his shoulder. I remembered what you said. Don't go to the fence. Find a grown-up. Call you. You remembered every single thing, Marcus said. You did everything exactly right. He pulled back just enough to look at her face. Her eyes were red-rimmed but dry, and there was something in them that he recognized because he had seen it in the mirror often enough. The look of someone who'd been scared and came out the other side stronger for it. Can you tell me exactly what happened? He asked gently. Start from the beginning. Rosie nodded and took a breath. We were at recess. I was playing foursquare with Maddie and some other kids. And then I saw him again by the fence, the same man from Monday and Tuesday. Same hat, same shoes with the rip. Was he doing anything? Just standing there at first. Mrs. Morrison was helping a kid who fell down by the swing so her back was turned. And that's when he got closer to the fence. Not on the playground, but right up against it. And he looked at me and said my name. Marcus felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his voice steady. What exactly did he say? He said, Rosalie, your daddy sent me to pick you up early. He had an emergency at work. But I knew it wasn't true because you never call me Rosalie unless I'm in trouble, and you always say the password if someone's picking me up. The password. Firefly. Marcus and Rosie had established it 2 years ago after a school assembly about stranger danger. If Marcus ever needed to send someone to pick her up, that person would know the word, no exceptions. What did you do then? I didn't say anything to him. I just walked away and went straight to Mrs. Morrison. I told her what happened, and she brought me inside right away. Mrs. Morrison finally spoke, her voice shaking slightly. Mr. Thorne, I'm so sorry. Rosie tried to tell me on Monday and Tuesday that she'd seen someone, and I didn't take it seriously enough. I thought she was just being cautious, maybe a little anxious. I should have checked. I should have walked the fence line myself. Marcus looked at her. Claire Morrison was a good teacher. He knew that because Rosie talked about her with the kind of affection kids reserve for adults who actually see them. But right now, he didn't have the energy to make her feel better about her mistake. You're listening now, he said quietly. That's what matters. Before anyone could say anything else, the door to the inner office opened, and Principal Warren Blake stepped out, his face drawn and serious. Blake was 50 years old with the kind of neat professional appearance that came from years of managing a school full of children and the parents who came with them. Marcus had met him a handful of times at school events, always polite, always measured. Right now, Blake looked like a man who just realized his school's safety protocols had a hole in them. Mr. Thorne, he said, extending a hand. Marcus stood and shook it, noting the firmness of the grip, the way Blake met his eyes without flinching. I cannot apologize enough for what just happened. Rosie is safe, and that's what matters most, but we should have acted sooner. Yes, Marcus said. You should have. Blake didn't argue. He just nodded. I've already called the sheriff's department. Deputy Hayes is on his way. I've also pulled the security footage from the last 3 days. Would you like to see it? Marcus looked down at Rosie still sitting in the blue chair, her backpack clutched in her lap. Sweetheart, I need to look at some videos with Mr. Blake. Are you okay to stay here with Mrs. Morrison for a few minutes? Rosie hesitated, then nodded. You won't leave without me. I won't leave without you, I promise. Mrs. Morrison sat down beside Rosie and put a gentle hand on her shoulder. We'll be right here, she said softly. Marcus followed Principal Blake into the office where a large monitor sat on the desk, already showing a paused image of the playground. Blake clicked the mouse and the first video began to play. Monday, 11:45 in the morning. The playground was full of children, moving in the chaotic, joyful way kids do when they're finally let loose after sitting still for hours. The camera angle captured most of the playground and the fence line beyond it. Blake pointed to the lower left corner of the screen near the oak tree. There, he said. Marcus leaned closer. A man stood just outside the fence, partially obscured by the tree. Gray baseball cap pulled low over his face. Dark jacket. From this angle, Marcus couldn't see his shoes, but he could see the way the man held his phone up to his ear, the way he kept turning his head to follow the movement of the children. "Is he on a call?" Marcus asked. Blake rewound the footage and zoomed in slightly. The man's mouth wasn't moving. His expression was blank-focused. "I don't think so," Blake said. "I think he's recording." Marcus felt something cold and sharp settle in his stomach. The video played on. The man stayed for 7 minutes. Then when the teacher started calling the kids to line up, he walked away, disappearing down the service road that ran along the back of the school property. "Tuesday," Blake said, clicking to the next file. "Same time, same location." But this time the man was closer. Not on school property, still technically legal, but close enough that Marcus could see more details. The brown shoes. The way one of them gaped open at the toe. The way the man's eyes tracked the children with a focus that made Marcus's hands curl into fists. At 11:50, Mrs. Morrison turned to help two boys who were arguing over whose turn it was on the slide. The moment her back was turned, the man lifted his hand. Two fingers, a small, casual wave aimed directly at Rosie. Marcus watched his daughter on the screen, saw her stop, mid-jump, saw the way her body went still, the way she looked toward her teacher, and then back at the fence before running to Mrs. Morrison's side. "She tried to tell me," Mrs. Morrison had said, and she had. But adults are busy. Adults have 100 things pulling at their attention. Adults, good ones, even sometimes miss the signs until it's too late. Blake clicked to Wednesday's footage. This time there was no pretense. The man appeared at 11:47, right on schedule, like he'd been watching the clock, learning the routine. He walked straight to the fence, no phone, no pretense of waiting for someone. Just a man in a playground and a little girl in a pink backpack. The camera angle wasn't perfect. Marcus couldn't hear what was being said, but he saw the man's lips move, saw him point toward the parking lot like he was trying to explain something. And he saw Rosie, small and smart and brave, shake her head once and turn away, walking quickly toward the building. Blake paused the video. "She didn't run," he said quietly. "She didn't scream. She just removed herself from the situation and found an adult. That's exactly what we teach them to do." Marcus stared at the frozen image on the screen. His daughter, 8 years old, handling a predator with more composure than most adults could manage. "How did he know her name?" Marcus asked. Blake's jaw tightened. He clicked over to a still image from Monday's footage, zoomed in on a different part of the playground. There, sitting on a bench near the slide, was a pink backpack, and hanging from the zipper, clearly visible, even in the grainy security footage, was a yellow tag with glittery letters. Rosalie Thorne. Marcus let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. They'd bought that tag together. Target back in August before school started. Rosie had been so excited picking out the yellow because it was bright and happy, because it would help her remember which backpack was hers in the pile by the classroom door. It had never occurred to Marcus that a name tag, something so innocent, could be a weapon in the wrong hands. "We encourage students to label their belongings," Blake said, and there was guilt in his voice. "For organization, for lost and found. We never thought about it as a safety risk." "You'll think about it now," Marcus said. Before Blake could respond, there was a knock on the door. A moment later, Deputy Richard Hayes stepped into the office, his uniform crisp, his expression serious. He was 47 years old, with white starting to show at his temples, and the kind of steady presence that came from 20 years of dealing with people on the worst days of their lives. He and Marcus had been friends since high school, back when Hayes was the kid who wanted to be a cop, and Marcus was the kid rebuilding motorcycles in his dad's garage. They drifted apart over the years, the way people do when life takes them in different directions, but the foundation was still there. Hayes nodded to Marcus, then turned to Blake. "Principal Blake, I got your call. Fill me in." Blake ran through it quickly. 3 days. Same man, same location. Wednesday, an attempted pickup using the child's name. Hayes listened without interrupting, his face giving nothing away. But Marcus saw the way his hand moved to his notebook, the way his pen started moving across the page. When Blake finished, Hayes turned to Marcus. "Your daughter's the one who reported this." "Rosie, she's 8. Can I talk to her?" Marcus hesitated. He didn't want Rosie to have to relive it again, didn't want her to feel like she was in trouble or being interrogated. But he also knew that Hayes needed to hear it directly, needed to get the details while they were still fresh. "I'll be with her the whole time," Marcus said. "Of course." They went back out to the main office. Rosie was still sitting with Mrs. Morrison, but she looked up the moment Marcus appeared, her eyes searching his face for reassurance. "Sweetheart, this is Deputy Hayes. He's a friend of mine. He needs to ask you some questions about what happened. Is that okay?" Rosie looked at Hayes, taking him in with the careful attention she gave everything. Then she nodded. Hayes pulled up a chair and sat down, making himself smaller, less intimidating. "Hi, Rosie. Your dad's told me you were really brave. I heard you did everything exactly right today." Rosie didn't smile, but some of the tension in her shoulders eased. "I just did what Daddy taught me." "That's smart. Can you tell me about the man you saw?" Rosie took a breath and went through it again. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the gray hat, the brown shoes, the way he'd called her by her full name and said her daddy sent him. Hayes wrote it all down, his pen moving steadily across the page. Did he ever try to come on to the playground? No, he stayed outside the fence. Did he ever say anything to you before today? No, just the wave on Tuesday. And you're sure he said your daddy sent him? Yes, he said there was an emergency at work, but Daddy would never send someone without the password. Hayes glanced at Marcus. "Password?" "We have a family code word," Marcus said. "If I ever need to send someone to pick her up, they have to know it. No exceptions." Hayes nodded approvingly. "That's good protocol. Did the man ask for the password?" Rosie shook her head. "No, he just said Daddy sent him and I should come with him." Hayes wrote that down, then looked at Blake. "Do you have a description of the vehicle?" Blake pulled up another still from the security footage. In the background, partially visible down the service road, was a blue sedan. The image was too grainy to make out the license plate, but there was something visible on the rear window. Hayes squinted at it. "Is that a sticker?" "Looks like it," Blake said. "Some kind of fish, maybe a religious symbol." Hayes took a photo of the screen with his phone. "I'll run this. Blue sedan fish sticker, Kentucky plates, if I had to guess from the color." "Kentucky," Marcus said. "Can't be sure without seeing it closer, but that shade of blue looks right. Either way, we'll find him." Hayes turned back to Rosie. "You did great, kiddo. Really. Because of you, we know what this guy looks like, what he drives, and exactly what he tried to do. That's going to help us a lot." Rosie looked at her father. "Am I in trouble?" Marcus crouched down beside her chair. "No, you are the furthest thing from trouble. You're the reason we can keep you and other kids safe." Rosie thought about that for a moment, then reached into her backpack and pulled out the yellow name tag. She looked at it for a long moment, at the glittery letters that spelled out her name, at the cheerful brightness of it. Then she handed it to Marcus. "Can we keep this inside from now on?" She asked. Marcus took the tag, feeling the weight of it in his palm, such a small thing that had become something dangerous in the wrong context. "Absolutely, and he said. He slipped it into his pocket, and something in Rosie's face eased, like removing the tag had removed a target she hadn't fully understood was there. Hayes stood up, closing his notebook. "I'm going to head out and start canvassing the area. If this guy's been here 3 days in a row, maybe someone else saw him. Maybe someone got a better look at the car." He looked at Marcus. "You taking her home?" "Yeah." "Good, keep her close. I'll call you if I find anything." Marcus shook his hand, feeling the weight of old friendship in the grip. "Thanks, Rich. That's what I'm here for." After Hayes left, Principal Blake cleared his throat. "Mr. Thorne, I want you to know that we're implementing new protocols immediately. No more name tags on the outside of backpacks. Teachers will be assigned to walk the fence line during every recess. And we're installing additional cameras to eliminate blind spots." Marcus looked at him for a long moment. "You should have done that before." Blake's face tightened, but he nodded. "You're right, we should have. I can't change that, but I can make sure it doesn't happen again." Marcus wanted to be angrier. wanted to yell to make someone pay for the fact that his daughter had spent 3 days being hunted and no one noticed until she forced them to. But anger wouldn't change what had already happened. Anger wouldn't make Rosie safer. "Make sure it doesn't," Marcus said. He turned to Rosie. "Come on, let's go home." She stood up, slinging her backpack over her shoulders, and slipped her hand into his. Together, they walked out of the office through the quiet hallways past the classrooms, where other children were still learning their spelling words and multiplication tables, unaware that one of their own had just survived something they had only been warned about in assemblies. Outside, the sun was still shining. The world was still turning. Nothing had changed except everything. Marcus lifted Rosie onto the Harley, watched her buckle her helmet, felt her arms wrap around his waist. 2 squeezes. She was ready. He started the engine and rode them home slowly this time, in no hurry to get anywhere, except away from the school, away from the fence, away from the man with the gray hat and the broken shoes. When they got home, Marcus made hot chocolate, even though it was the middle of the day. He sat with Rosie at the kitchen table, not saying much, just being there, while she slowly came down from the adrenaline, while the fear started to loosen its grip. "Daddy," she said after a while. "Yeah. How did you know to believe me?" Marcus set down his mug and looked at his daughter. 8 years old, too young to understand how rare it was for adults to listen, to really listen when a child said something felt wrong. "I didn't believe someone once when I should have," he said, "and I promised myself I'd never make that mistake again." "Aunt Sophia." "Yeah, Aunt Sophia." Rosie was quiet for a moment, processing. "Do you think he'll come back?" Marcus wanted to lie, wanted to tell her no, everything's fine, you're safe, it's over. But he'd built their relationship on truth, on trusting her to handle hard things if he gave them to her honestly. "I don't know," he said, "but I know that he won't get close to you. Not if I can help it." Rosie nodded, accepting in that. They spent the rest of the afternoon together. No homework, no chores. Just the two of them watching movies, playing cards, existing in the small safe circle they'd built for themselves, in a world that had just proven once again that it wasn't as safe as anyone wanted to believe. At 6:30, Marcus's phone rang. Hayes. Marcus stepped into the other room to answer. "Talk to me." "We got him," Hayes said. Marcus felt his breath catch. "Where?" "Gas station about 40 miles south of here. Blue sedan Kentucky plates, fish stickered in on the back window. Name's Daniel Cross, 41 years old. No kids, no connection to Oakwood or the school. When we pulled him over and asked why he was in the area, he said he was visiting family. When we asked which family, he couldn't give us a name. So you arrested him?" "Not yet. We don't have enough for an arrest. But we searched his car with his consent, and Marcus, we found something." Marcus's hand tightened on the phone. "What?" "A notebook, handwritten, 12 names, 12 different schools. Rosie's name is number 8. The world tilted. Marcus sat down hard on the edge of the couch, his mind trying to process what Hayes was telling him. 12 kids. 12 names, Hayes corrected. "We don't know yet if he's made contact with the others, but each entry has details, what they look like, what they wear, what time they come out for recess. Rosie's entry says pink backpack, yellow name tag, place 4 square, dad picks up on motorcycle." Marcus felt sick. He was planning this. "Yeah, he was. And because your daughter spoke up, because you listened, we caught him before he could finish whatever he was planning." Marcus pressed his palm against his forehead, seeing Rosie's face small and serious, saying the man was back, saying something felt wrong. "What happens now?" "Now we investigate. We contact the other schools on the list. We see if anyone else reported seeing him. We build a case, and Marcus, I need you to know something. If Rosie hadn't said anything, if you hadn't taken her seriously, this could have ended very differently." "I know." "No, I mean it. You did the right thing. Both of you." After they hung up, Marcus sat for a long time in the quiet living room, listening to the sound of the TV in the next room where Rosie was watching cartoons, her voice occasionally rising in a laugh at something on screen. 12 names, 12 children who'd been watched, studied, cataloged like prey. And Rosie had been number 8. He stood up and walked back into the living room. Rosie looked up at him, and he saw the question in her eyes. Was that Deputy Hayes? Yeah. Did they find him? Marcus sat down beside her on the couch. They did. They found him, and they found something else. A list of kids he'd been watching at different schools. Your name was on it. Rosie's eyes went wide. Other kids? Yeah, 11 others. Are they okay? Marcus felt his chest tighten. His daughter had just learned she'd been targeted by a predator, and her first question was whether other children were safe. We don't know yet, but because you spoke up, because you told me what you saw, the police are going to check on all of them. You might have just helped save 11 other kids. Rosie looked down at her hands, small and still child-soft, not yet ready to carry the weight of being a hero. I just did what you taught me, she said quietly. I know, and that's exactly what made the difference. That night, after Rosie had gone to bed, after Marcus had checked the locks on every door and window twice, after he'd stood in her doorway watching her sleep the way he did every night, he sat down at the kitchen table and did something he hadn't done in 3 years. He called his sister. Sophia answered on the third ring, her voice surprised. Marcus, hey, Soph, is everything okay? You never call this late. Marcus took a breath. Something happened with Rosie. He heard Sophia's sharp intake of breath, the immediate spike of fear that came from her own childhood trauma. Is she hurt? No, she's safe, but I need to tell you about it. He told her everything. The 3 days, the man at the fence, the name tag, the notebook with 12 names, and he told her about the moment when Rosie had called him, when she'd said the man knew her name, when he'd had to choose between dismissing her fear and believing it. When he finished, Sophia was quiet for a long time. You believed her, she finally said. Yeah, I did. The first time. Another silence, and Marcus could feel the weight of 24 years sitting in it, the weight of 46 minutes, when a 7-year-old girl had been lost and her 14-year-old brother had learned what it meant to fail someone you loved. I'm proud of you, Sophia said, and her voice was thick with something that might have been tears. You did what I needed you to do all those years ago. You did it for Rosie. I should have done it for you. You were 14, Marcus. You didn't know. That doesn't make it hurt less. No, Sophia agreed. It doesn't, but this does. Knowing that you learned, knowing that you didn't let history repeat itself. Marcus felt something in his chest loosen just a little, like a knot that had been tied for so long he'd forgotten it was there. I'm sorry, Soph, for not believing you, for not being the brother you needed. I know, and I forgive you. I forgave you a long time ago, Marcus. I just didn't know how to tell you. They talked for another hour about Rosie, about the past, about the ways trauma echoes through families like a stone thrown into still water. And when they finally hung up, Marcus felt lighter than he had in years. The next morning, Marcus woke to his phone buzzing with messages. The first was from Hayes. Daniel Cross in custody, charged with attempted child abduction, stalking, and several other counts. Bail denied. He's not going anywhere. The second was from Principal Blake. Emergency parent meeting scheduled for tomorrow evening. We're implementing Rosie's protocol school-wide. Name tags inside only. Fence patrols during all recesses. Every family required to establish a pickup password. Thank you for pushing us to do better. Rosie's protocol. Marcus showed Rosie the message over breakfast. They're calling it after you, he said. Rosie looked at the phone, then up at her father. Will it help other kids? Yeah, it will. She nodded, satisfied, and went back to her cereal. A week later, Oakwood Elementary held a parent meeting in the gymnasium. 200 people showed up, filling the bleachers, standing against the walls. Principal Blake stood at a microphone in the center of the floor, and beside him on a screen was a presentation titled Student Safety New Protocols. Marcus and Rosie sat in the front row. Marcus hadn't planned to bring her, but she'd asked, and he'd learned not to underestimate what his daughter could handle. Blake started by explaining what had happened. He didn't use Rosie's name at first, but everyone knew. Word had spread the way word always does in small towns, carried on waves of concern and whispered conversations at grocery stores and coffee shops. He talked about the 3 days, the man at the fence, the name tag, the notebook, and then he talked about what they were doing to make sure it never happened again. Name tags inside backpacks only. No visible identification. Teachers assigned to walk the fence line during every recess, rotating positions to eliminate patterns. Required family passwords for all pickups, no exceptions. Monthly safety assemblies for students, teaching them to trust their instincts and speak up when something feels wrong. And finally, Blake did something Marcus hadn't expected. He asked Rosie to stand up. She looked at Marcus, uncertain. He nodded. Rosie stood small and nervous, and Blake addressed the room. This young lady did something incredibly brave. For 3 days, she noticed something that didn't feel right. And instead of staying quiet, instead of worrying she was being silly or causing trouble, she spoke up. She told her teacher. She told her father. And because of that, a dangerous person was stopped before he could hurt her or anyone else. Blake paused, letting that sink in. We failed her at first. Her teacher and I both admitted that. She tried to tell us on day one, and we didn't take it seriously enough. But she didn't give up. She kept telling us until we listened. And now, because of her courage, every child in this school is safer. The room erupted in applause. Rosie's face went red, and she sat down quickly, pressing herself against Marcus's side. He put his arm around her and leaned down to whisper in her ear, "You did good. I'm so proud of you." After the meeting, parents came up to thank her. Some shook her hand. Some told her she was brave. Some told their own children. See, this is why you always tell someone when something feels wrong. And Rosie, 8 years old and overwhelmed, just nodded and held her father's hand and let the adults say what they needed to say. That night back home, after the adrenaline had worn off and the attention had faded, Rosie sat at the kitchen table with a piece of paper and some markers. "What are you drawing?" Marcus asked. "Something for school, for the other kids." Marcus came closer and looked over her shoulder. Rosie had drawn a picture of a playground with stick-figure children playing. At the top, in careful letters, she'd written, "If something feels wrong, it's okay to say so. Your voice matters." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Can I hang this one on the fridge?" he asked. Rosie nodded. Marcus took the drawing and pinned it up with a magnet right next to her spelling test and a photo of the two of them on the Harley. And there it stayed, a reminder that sometimes the smallest voices carry the most important messages, if only the adults are willing to listen. 2 days after the parent meeting, Marcus's phone rang at 8 in the morning. The number showed Chicago. Sophia. "Hey," he answered. "I'm coming home this weekend," she said without preamble. "I need to meet her. I need to meet Rosie." Marcus felt something shift in his chest, something that had been locked tight for a very long time. "Yeah," he said, "I'd like that." Friday afternoon arrived with gray skies and the promise of rain that hadn't quite made up its mind. Marcus picked Rosie up from school and drove them home, where he spent the next hour cleaning the house in a way he hadn't bothered with in months. Vacuuming, dusting, making sure the guest room had clean sheets. Rosie watched him from the couch, amused. "Daddy, why are you cleaning so much?" "Your Aunt Sophia's coming to visit. I want the place to look nice." "Does she care if there's dust?" Marcus paused with the vacuum in his hand. "Probably not, but I care." At 6:30, headlights swept across the front windows. Marcus heard a car door close, footsteps on the walkway, and then a knock. He opened the door. Sophia stood on the porch, older than in the last time he'd seen her, but still unmistakably his little sister. 31 now, with dark hair cut short and professional clothes that spoke of courtrooms and client meetings. But her eyes were the same dark and serious carrying weight that most people her age didn't have to carry. "Hi, Marcus." "Hi, Soph." For a moment, they just looked at each other, 24 years of history, sitting between them like furniture they'd learned to navigate around but never quite moved. Then Sophia stepped forward and hugged him, and Marcus hugged her back, and something that had been broken for a very long time started just barely to heal. When they pulled apart, Rosie was standing in the hallway watching with the careful attention she gave everything. Sophia crouched down, making herself smaller. "You must be Rosie." Rosie nodded. "You're Aunt Sophia, from Chicago." "That's right, I've heard a lot about you." "I've heard about you too," Rosie said. "Daddy told me what happened when you were little." Sophia glanced up at Marcus, surprised, then looked back at Rosie. "He did." "Yeah, he said you tried to tell him about a bad man, and he didn't believe you. And then you got lost for 46 minutes. Sophia's throat worked, but she kept her voice steady. "That's right. It was very scary." "I'm sorry that happened to you," Rosie said with the solemn sincerity only children can pull off. Sophia's eyes filled, but she smiled. "Thank you, sweetheart. But you know what? Because of what happened to me, your daddy knew to believe you. So maybe something good came out of it after all." They had dinner together, the three of them around the kitchen table that usually only held two. Marcus made spaghetti, which was one of the 5 things he could cook reliably, and Rosie told Sophia about school, about her friends, about the new protocols Principal Blake had put in place. "Everyone has to have a password now," Rosie explained, "and we're not allowed to wear name tags on the outside of our backpacks anymore." "That's smart," Sophia said. "What's your password?" Rosie looked at Marcus, who nodded. "Firefly," Rosie said, "like from the song." Sophia's face softened. "Jennifer used to sing that to you." "Yeah, before I was born, Daddy says. And after until I was 2. She had a beautiful voice." Marcus looked down at his plate, feeling the old ache settle in his chest, familiar and permanent as a scar. After dinner, Rosie went upstairs to get ready for bed, and Marcus and Sophia sat in the living room with coffee the way they used to when they were younger, and the world felt simpler. "She's amazing," Sophia said. "Yeah, she is. You've done a good job with her, Marcus, on your own." "I had help, the writers, some of the other parents, Jennifer's mom before she passed." "Still, you showed up. Every day. That's not nothing." Marcus turned his mug in his hands, watching the coffee swirl. "I'm sorry, Soph, for not believing you, for making you feel like you couldn't trust me." Sophia was quiet for a long moment. "I know you are. And I meant what I said on the phone. I forgave you a long time ago. Then why didn't we talk for 3 years?" Sophia looked at him, and in her eyes, Marcus saw the little girl who'd come home scared and shaking, who'd needed her big brother and found only doubt. "Because forgiving you didn't mean I knew how to be around you. Every time I saw you, I remembered that feeling of telling you something terrible was happening and watching you not believe me. I was 14. I know, and I don't blame you for being 14, but that didn't make it hurt less." Marcus nodded, accepting us that. "What changed?" Sophia said simply. "You believed Rosie. The first time she told you something was wrong, you believed her. You didn't wait. You didn't dismiss her. You acted. And that told me something I needed to know." "What?" "That you learned, that you grew, that you became the person I needed you to be, even if it was too late for me." But it wasn't too late for Rosie. Footsteps on the stairs interrupted them. Rosie appeared in her pajamas, holding her stuffed bear. "I'm ready for bed, Daddy." Marcus stood up. "I'll tuck you in. Be right back." Upstairs, he sat on the edge of Rosie's bed while she climbed under the covers. "I like Aunt Sophia," she said. "I'm glad. She's sad, though, I can tell." Marcus smoothed her hair back from her forehead. "Yeah, she is sometimes. But she's getting better." "Because you believe me?" "Partly, yeah." Rosie thought about that. "It's weird that something bad almost happening to me helped fix something that happened a long time ago. Life's like that sometimes. Bad things and good things all mixed together." "Do you think the man with the gray hat will go to jail?" "Yes, for a long time." "Good." Rosie was quiet for a moment. Daddy, do you think the other kids on his list are okay? Marcus had been waiting for this question. Hayes had called him 2 days ago with an update. Of the 12 names in Daniel Cross's notebook, 9 had been contacted. 4 reported seeing the same man near their schools. 2 parents had filed reports that went nowhere. 1 child had tried to tell a teacher and been dismissed as anxious. None of them had been taken, but all of them had been watched. They're safe, Marcus said, which was true enough. Because you spoke up, the police knew to check on them. You helped keep them safe. Rosie nodded, satisfied. Can Aunt Sophia stay for the whole weekend? She's planning on it. Good, I want to show her my room tomorrow. And my drawings. I think she'd like that. Marcus kissed her forehead and stood up. Good night. Good night, Daddy. I love you. I love you too. Downstairs, Sophia was still on the couch looking at the photos on the mantel. Pictures of Rosie at different ages. Pictures of Jennifer. One old photo of Marcus and Sophia as kids before everything got complicated. She asked about the other kids, Marcus said. That's very her, worrying about everyone else. Gets it from her mother. Sophia turned to face him. Can I ask you something? Yeah. When she told you about the man the first time, were you scared you were overreacting? Were you scared you were being paranoid? Marcus thought about it. Yeah, part of me wanted to believe it was nothing, that I was seeing danger where there wasn't any. But then I remembered you. I remembered not believing you, and I decided I'd rather be wrong and cautious than right and too late. That's the thing about trauma, Sophia said quietly. It teaches you the wrong lessons and the right ones all at the same time. It taught me not to trust people, but it taught you to trust Rosie. Same event, different lessons. Do you trust people now? Some. The ones who earn it. She looked at him. I'm starting to trust you again. I'm glad. They sat together in comfortable silence for a while, the kind that only comes between people who've known each other their whole lives, who've been broken and rebuilt and broken again, who finally maybe found their way back to something like solid ground. Saturday morning, Marcus woke to the sound of laughter downstairs. He came down to find Sophia and Rosie at the kitchen table, Rosie showing her aunt the drawings she'd made over the past year. School assignments. Pictures of the Harley. A drawing of Jennifer that Marcus had never seen before, saved in a folder Rosie kept private. That's your mom, Sophia was saying. You drew her beautifully. I don't remember her much, Rosie admitted. Just little things. The way she smelled, the song she sang. Daddy tells me stories so I don't forget. Sophia looked up and saw Marcus in the doorway. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, and understanding that some losses never fully heal, they just become part of who you are. Marcus made breakfast while Sophia and Rosie kept talking. He listened to them discuss school friends, what it was like being a lawyer in Chicago, what it was like being 8 years old in Oakwood. They found an easy rhythm the way some people just do, like they'd known each other longer than a single evening. After breakfast, Rosie asked if Aunt Sophia wanted to see her room. I'd love to, Sophia said. Marcus cleaned up while they went upstairs. He heard their voices through the ceiling, rising and falling, punctuated by Rosie's occasional laugh. It was a sound he'd worried he might never hear from Sophia again, that lightness, that ability to be fully present with another person without the past pulling her backward. Later, after Rosie had gone outside to play in the yard, Sophia came back down and found Marcus on the back porch, watching his daughter climb the old oak tree they'd reinforced last summer. She's fearless, Sophia said, sitting down beside him. She's careful, Marcus corrected. There's a difference. She knows her limits. She tests them, but she doesn't ignore them. You taught her that. Jennifer taught her that. I'm just trying not to mess it up. They watched Rosie for a while, the way she moved from branch to branch with the confidence of someone who'd done this 100 times. Marcus, I need to tell you something. He looked at Sophia. What? When you called me last week, when you told me what happened with Rosie, I had a panic attack. First one in 5 years. I was at work in the middle of a meeting, and I had to excuse myself and sit in the bathroom until I could breathe again. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Soph, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Let me finish. She turned to face him. I had the panic attack because for a minute I thought I was 7 again. I thought I was back in that moment when no one believed me when I was trying to tell people something was wrong and no one would listen. But then I remembered what you said. You believed her from day one, and the panic attack stopped. How? Because I realized that the worst thing that happened to me, the thing that broke my trust in people and you, wasn't going to happen to Rosie. You made sure of that. And knowing that you'd learned, that you'd changed, that you'd become the person I needed you to be, even if it was too late for me, that healed something I didn't think could be healed. Sophia's voice cracked, but she kept going. You can't fix what happened to me, Marcus. You can't go back and make 14-year-old you believe me, but you can be the person who believes Rosie, and you are. And that matters more than you know. Marcus reached over and took his sister's hand. I wish I could go back, he said quietly. I wish I could be the brother you deserved. You can't go back, but you can be the father Rosie deserves. And you are, every day. They sat like that for a long time, hands linked watching Rosie play, while something that had been broken between them for 24 years finally carefully began to mend. That evening, the three of them drove to the cemetery where Jennifer was buried. It was Rosie's idea. She wanted Aunt Sophia to meet her mother, even if it was just a headstone and flowers. They stood together in the fading light, Marcus in the middle, Rosie on one side, and Sophia on the other, looking at the simple marker that read, Jennifer Marie Thorne, beloved wife and mother. Rosie spoke first the way she always did. Hi, Mama. I brought Aunt Sophia to meet you. She came all the way from Chicago. Sophia smiled, tears in her eyes. Hi, Jennifer. I wish I'd known you better. But I can see you in Rosie. The way she cares about people. The way she's brave, even when she's scared. Thank you for that. Marcus didn't say anything out loud. But in his head, in the quiet place where he kept all the conversations he'd never get to have, he said, We're okay, Jen. Rosie and me. We're doing okay. I wish you were here, but we're okay. On the drive home, Rosie fell asleep in the back seat, and Sophia rode in the passenger seat, watching the small Ohio town drift past in the twilight. Are you going to stay in Chicago? Marcus asked. For now, my job's there, my life's there, but I think I'll visit more often, if that's okay. It's more than okay. Rosie needs family, more than just you. She's got the riders. That's not the same as blood. Marcus thought about that. No, he agreed. It's not. Sunday morning came too fast. Sophia's flight was at 2, which meant she needed to leave by noon. They had breakfast together one last time, and then Sophia packed her bag while Rosie sat on the guest bed watching. Do you have to go? Rosie asked. I do, sweetheart. I have work tomorrow, but I'll come back soon. I promise. How soon? Maybe next month. And you could come visit me in Chicago sometime if your dad says it's okay. Rosie's eyes lit up. Really? Really. I'll take you to the museums and the aquarium and the best pizza place in the city. Can Daddy come too? Of course. At the door, Sophia hugged Rosie tight. You're a very special girl, Rosie Thorne. Don't let anyone tell you different. I won't. Then Sophia turned to Marcus. They looked at each other for a long moment, and then she stepped forward and hugged him the way she used to when they were kids before everything got broken. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For becoming someone I can trust again. Marcus held her tight, feeling the weight of 24 years lifting just a little. I love you, Soph. I love you too. After she drove away, Marcus and Rosie stood in the driveway waving until the car disappeared around the corner. I like Aunt Sophia, Rosie said. Me too. Me too. 3 weeks later, Marcus got a call from an unfamiliar number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Mr. Thorne, speaking. This is FBI agent Maria Cortez. I'm calling about the Daniel Cross case. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. What about it? We've completed our investigation. Mr. Cross was part of a larger network of individuals who were surveilling children at schools across 4 states. Because of your daughter's report and the evidence we gathered from his vehicle, we were able to identify and apprehend 3 other suspects. 12 children total were being watched. None were harmed in large part because your daughter spoke up when she did. Marcus sat down slowly. 12 kids. Yes, sir. I wanted to personally thank you and your daughter. Cases like this, they often go unreported until it's too late. Your daughter's courage quite possibly saved lives. After he hung up, Marcus sat for a long time thinking about 12 names in a notebook. 12 children who went to school and played at recess and wore name tags on their backpacks. 12 children who could have become 46 minutes of hell for 12 different families. But they didn't, because one 8-year-old girl had trusted her instincts and one father had believed her. That evening, Principal Blake called to ask if Marcus and Rosie would be willing to speak at a district-wide safety assembly. Schools from all over the county were implementing new protocols, and they wanted to hear from the family that had started it all. Marcus asked Rosie, "Do you want to talk to other kids about what happened?" Rosie thought about it. Will it help them stay safe? I think it might. Then okay. The assembly was held on a Saturday morning at the county high school gymnasium. 300 students from 8 different elementary schools filled the bleachers. Parents lined the walls. Teachers sat in folding chairs on the floor. Marcus stood at the microphone, Rosie beside him, and looked out at all those faces. "I'm not good at public speaking," he started. "I'm better with engines than words. But my daughter asked me to be here, so here I am." A few scattered laughs. "3 weeks ago, my daughter told me she saw something that didn't feel right. A man at her school playground. She told me once, then twice, then a third time, and each time I believed her. Not because I had proof, not because I was sure she was right, but because I'd learned a long time ago what happens when adults don't listen to children." He paused, looking at Rosie. "I'm going to let her tell you the rest." Rosie stepped up to the microphone. Marcus lowered it to her height, and she looked out at the crowd with the same serious expression she wore when she was working through a hard math problem. "Hi, my name is Rosie Thorne. I'm 8 years old. 3 weeks ago, a man tried to take me from my school." The gymnasium went completely silent. "He didn't grab me or anything. He just stood outside the fence for 3 days watching. On the third day, he said my daddy sent him to pick me up. But I knew that wasn't true because my daddy would never send someone without giving them our password first." She paused, gathering her thoughts the way kids do when they're trying to get something exactly right. "I want to tell you all something important. If something feels wrong, even if you're not sure, even if you think maybe you're being silly, you should tell an adult. Tell 2 adults in case one doesn't believe you. Keep telling people until someone listens." A few parents in the crowd were crying now. "I was scared to tell my teacher at first because I didn't want to get in trouble for making things up. But my daddy told me something that helped. He said telling the truth isn't making trouble. It's helping adults know what's really happening." She looked up at Marcus, and he nodded encouragement. "The man who tried to take me had a list of 12 other kids. I was number 8. Because I told someone the police found him before he could hurt me or any of the other kids. So if I can be brave enough to tell, even when I'm scared, you can too." Rosie stepped back from the microphone. The gymnasium erupted in applause. Principal Blake came forward and thanked them both. Then he announced the new protocols being implemented district-wide. The same ones Oakwood had started. Name tags inside backpacks, fence patrols, family passwords, monthly safety assemblies. They were calling it Rosie's Protocol. After the assembly, parents came up to shake Rosie's hand to thank her, to tell their own children, "See, this is why we have the password. This is why you always tell us when something feels wrong." One mother came up with tears streaming down her face. "My daughter's name was on that list," she said. "Number 10, we didn't know, we didn't see him, but because of your daughter, the police came to our school and told us. They increased security. They caught him before he could try anything." Thank you. Thank you for believing her. Marcus just nodded his throat too tight for words. 2 months later, on a Saturday morning in early spring, Marcus got an email from a woman named Patricia Coleman in Indiana. Mr. Thorne, you don't know me, but my daughter Emily saw a video about your daughter at a school assembly. Last week, Emily told me she saw a man taking pictures of children at her playground. Normally, I might have dismissed it as paranoia, but I remembered Rosie's protocol. I called the police. The man turned out to be a registered sex offender who wasn't supposed to be within 1,000 feet of a school. Because of your daughter's story, because she taught Emily it was okay to speak up, my daughter may have prevented something terrible. I wanted you to know that Rosie's courage is spreading further than you might realize. Thank you. Marcus read the email 3 times, then showed it to Rosie. She read it carefully, her face serious. That's in Indiana, she said. That's far away. Yeah, it is. So the protocol works even in other states. Looks like it. Rosie thought about that, then went back to her homework, like saving children in other states was just another normal Saturday morning. But Marcus sat with the email for a long time, thinking about ripples spreading across water, about one voice becoming many, about how the smallest act of courage can change more than you ever see. 1 year after the incident, Oakwood Elementary held a ceremony. They unveiled a new policy board in the main hallway right next to the office. At the top, in bold letters, it read, Student Safety Protocol. Below that, in smaller print, established in honor of Rosie Thorne, who taught us that listening to children can save lives. Marcus and Rosie stood in front of it, along with Principal Blake, Deputy Hayes, and half the school. A reporter from the local paper took their picture. The story ran the next day with the headline, The Girl Who Trusted Her Voice. Marcus cut it out and put it in a frame, but he didn't hang it on the wall. He tucked it away in a drawer because the last thing Rosie needed was a constant reminder that she'd been in danger. What she needed was to be 9 years old now and play foursquare and climb trees and live a normal life where the worst thing that happened was forgetting her homework or arguing with her best friend over whose turn it was on the swings. But sometimes late at night, Marcus would take the clipping out and read it and remember. On the first day of 4th grade, Marcus drove Rosie to school the same way he always did. Harley rumbling, pink helmet secured, 2 squeezes meaning she was ready. They pulled into the drop-off lane, and Rosie climbed off, pulling off her helmet. Have a good day. You too, Daddy. She started to turn away, then stopped and looked back. Daddy, I love you. I love you too. She smiled gap-toothed and bright and ran toward the school. Marcus watched her go the same way he did every morning. But this time something was different. This time he saw the fence line where a teacher walks slow patrol eyes scanning. He saw the revised entry protocols where every visitor had to show ID and state their business. He saw other children playing backpacks tucked safely inside the building, name tags hidden from view. He saw a school that had learned to listen. And he saw his daughter running toward her classroom safe, not because the world was safe, but because the adults had finally decided to take children seriously when they said something felt wrong. That night after dinner, Rosie asked Marcus if he remembered Aunt Sophia's visit. Of course I do. She said something that I've been thinking about. What's that? She said that bad things and good things are all mixed together. That something bad happening to her helped you believe me. And something what almost happening to me helped you and Aunt Sophia be friends again. Marcus nodded. That's true. So does that mean bad things are actually good things in disguise? Marcus thought about how to answer that. How to explain to a 9-year-old that life wasn't simple, that trauma wasn't a gift no matter what good came from it, that healing was possible, but it didn't erase the wound. No, he said finally. Bad things are still bad. What happened to Aunt Sophia was bad. What almost happened to you was bad. But what we do after the bad thing that can be good, the bad thing doesn't become good, but we can choose to learn from it, to grow, to help other people so the bad thing doesn't happen to them. Rosie considered this. So the bad thing is still bad, but we can make good things come after. Exactly. That makes sense. She went back to her drawing satisfied. Marcus watched her, this small person who'd somehow become wise beyond her years, and thought about all the voices that go unheard, all the children who try to tell adults something is wrong and get dismissed as dramatic or anxious or attention-seeking. He thought about Sophia, 7 years old, trying to tell her 14-year-old brother that she was being followed. He thought about the 12 other names in Daniel Cross's notebook and how many of them had tried to tell someone before Rosie forced the adults to listen. He thought about Emily in Indiana and all the other children who'd learned from Rosie's story that their voice mattered. And he made a promise to himself right there at the kitchen table while his daughter drew pictures of flowers and sunshine. He would never stop listening. 6 months later, Marcus got a letter in the mail. The return address said Patricia Coleman, Indiana. He opened it carefully. Inside was a single page, handwritten in neat script. Mr. Thorne, I wrote to you once before about my daughter Emily. I'm writing again because something has happened that I think you should know about. Emily is now working with the county sheriff's department to teach other children about safety awareness. She calls her presentation Rosie's Rules. She's 9 years old and she's already spoken at 6 schools. I wanted you to know that your daughter's courage didn't just save Emily, it inspired her. It gave her a voice she didn't know she had. Thank you for raising a daughter brave enough to speak up, and thank you for being a father willing to listen. The world needs more of both. Marcus read the letter twice, then walked upstairs to where Rosie was doing homework at her desk. Sweetheart, I got a letter today. About you. He read it to her. When he finished, Rosie was quiet for a long moment. Emily's teaching other kids. Sounds like it. That's good. More kids should know the rules. What rules are those? Rosie turned in her chair to face him. Trust your voice. Tell to adults. Keep telling until someone listens. Know your password. Keep your name hidden. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Marcus felt his chest tighten. Those are good rules. They're not just my rules anymore, though. They're everyone's rules now. And she was right. Over the next year, Marcus received 17 more letters from parents across 6 states. Each one told a similar story. A child who'd seen Rosie's story. A child who'd spoken up about something that felt wrong. A child who'd been believed because an 8-year-old girl in Ohio had proved that children's instincts matter. 3 potential abductions prevented, 2 registered offenders caught violating restraining orders. 1 trafficking ring uncovered because a 10-year-old boy noticed the same van circling his school 3 days in a row and remembered that Rosie had noticed patterns too. Marcus kept every letter in a box in his closet. He didn't show them to Rosie unless they specifically mentioned her because she didn't need the weight of other people's trauma on her small shoulders. She'd carried enough. But sometimes late at night, he'd take out the box and read through them and remember that 46 minutes when Sophia was lost and the 3 days when Rosie was being watched and how the difference between those 2 stories was simple. He'd listened. On Rosie's 10th birthday, Sophia came to visit again. She'd been coming every 2 months now, rebuilding the relationship with her brother piece by piece, becoming part of Rosie's life in a way that felt natural and right. They celebrated with cake and presents and a movie. But before bed, Sophia asked if she could talk to Rosie alone. Marcus gave them space. Later, when Rosie was asleep, Sophia came downstairs and found Marcus on the back porch. What did you talk about? He asked. I told her the whole story. The real one, not the kid-friendly version you gave her. Marcus tensed. Soph, she asked Marcus, she's 10 now. She's been through her own trauma. She deserved to hear the truth. What did you tell her? I told her that when I was 7, a man followed me for a week. That I told you and you didn't believe me. That I went to the store alone one day and he approached me there. That he tried to get me to come with him, said he knew Mom and Dad said they'd sent him. That I ran inside the store and the clerk called the police. That they found me but they didn't find him. That I was safe but I was changed. Marcus felt sick. What did she say? She asked me if I was still scared. I told her yes sometimes, but that I'd learned to live with it. And then she asked me the most amazing question. What She asked me if it helped knowing that Daddy believed her when he didn't believe me, if it helped heal the old hurt. Marcus waited. I told her yes. I told her that watching you be the father I needed you to be, even though it was too late for me, helped more than years of therapy, because it meant you'd learned. It meant you'd grown. It meant the 14-year-old boy who didn't understand became the man who did. Sophia's voice cracked, but she kept going. And then she said something I'll never forget. She said, I'm glad something good came from my scary thing. I'm glad it helped you and Daddy be a family again. Marcus felt tears on his face and didn't bother to wipe them away. She's a good kid, Sophia said softly. You're raising someone special, Marcus. Someone who's going to change the world just by being exactly who she is. She already has. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds of the Ohio countryside, thinking about all the ways one voice can ripple outward, changing things in ways you never see touching, lives you never meet. The next morning over breakfast, Rosie asked Marcus a question. Daddy, do you think Mom would be proud of me? Marcus set down his coffee. I know she would be. I know it for certain. How do you know? Because your mom believed that people should help each other. She believed that if you saw something wrong, you fixed it if you could. And that's exactly what you did. You saw something wrong, you told someone, and you helped fix it before anyone got hurt. That's exactly the kind of person she wanted you to be. Rosie nodded, satisfied. I wish I remembered her better. Me too, but I'll keep telling you stories so you don't forget. Tell me a new one. So Marcus told her about the time Jennifer had seen a lost dog in their neighborhood and spent 3 hours tracking down the owner. About how she'd believed in helping even when it was inconvenient, even when it would have been easier to look the other way. And as he talked, he watched his daughter's face light up with the story, learning about her mother through the lens of kindness and courage, becoming the kind of person who would speak up for those who couldn't speak for themselves. Just like Jennifer had been, just like Rosie already was. 5 years later, on a warm spring afternoon, Marcus sat in the bleachers of the county high school, watching a 13-year-old Rosie stand at a podium in front of 300 middle schoolers. She was taller now, her voice stronger, but the same serious expression was there when she talked about safety and awareness and the importance of trusting your instincts. When I was 8, she said, a man tried to take me from my school. He didn't grab me, he didn't force me. He just used my name and lied about my father sending him. I could have gone with him, some kids might have, but I didn't because my dad taught me that if someone's really there to pick you up, they'll know the password. She paused, looking out at the crowd. I'm telling you this not to scare you, but to empower you. Your voice matters. Your instincts matter. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And the adults in your life should listen when you speak. If they don't, you keep talking until you find one who will. After her presentation, kids came up to ask questions. Parents thanked her. Teachers told her she was making a difference. And Marcus stood in the back, watching his daughter become the voice for children everywhere who needed permission to trust themselves. On the drive home, Rosie was quiet. You okay? Marcus asked. Yeah, just thinking. About what? About how weird it is that the worst thing that almost happened to me became the thing I'm kind of known for. Like I'm the girl who almost got kidnapped. That's my thing now. Marcus pulled over to the side of the road and turned to face her. That's not your thing, Rosie. You're not the girl who almost got kidnapped. You're the girl who trusted herself when it mattered. You're the girl who spoke up. You're the girl who taught other kids they could do the same. That's your thing. Rosie looked at him, and Marcus saw Jennifer in her eyes, that same fierce intelligence and compassion. Thanks, Daddy. I mean it. What happened to you was terrible. But what you did with it, what you're still doing with it, that's all you. That's all your choice. You could have let it make you scared forever. Instead, you let it make you strong. Can I be both? What do you mean, can I be strong and still scared sometimes? Marcus smiled. Yes, that's actually the definition of brave. being scared and doing it anyway. They drove the rest of the way home in comfortable silence, and when they pulled into the driveway, Rosie turned to Marcus one more time. Daddy, I'm glad you believed me. I'm glad you told me. I know Aunt Sophia's thing with you is complicated. I know it still hurts sometimes. But I want you to know that I've never doubted you'd believe me. Not once. Marcus felt his throat close. That means everything to me, Rosie. Everything. She smiled, then climbed off the bike and headed inside, leaving Marcus sitting in the driveway thinking about trust and redemption and second chances. Thinking about how sometimes the worst moments of our lives give us the chance to be better than we were before. Thinking about how one daughter's voice had healed 2 decades of broken trust between a brother and sister. And thinking about how, in the end, the smallest voice in the room had changed everything. That night, Marcus wrote a letter. Not to anyone specific, just to put his thoughts on paper to make sense of everything that had happened since that Wednesday morning 5 years ago, when his daughter called from the school office. He wrote about fear and faith and the difference between the two. He wrote about listening, really listening to the people you love. He wrote about mistakes and how you can't fix them, but you can learn from them. And he wrote about Rosie, who at 8 years old had been braver than most adults ever have to be. When he finished, he folded the letter and put it in an envelope. On the front, he wrote, "To Rosie, to be opened on your 18th birthday." He tucked it away in his desk drawer next to the box of letters from other parents and the newspaper clipping from 5 years ago. Then he went upstairs, checked on his daughter, the way he'd done every night since she was born, and whispered the same prayer he'd whispered every night for 13 years. Keep her safe. Help me be the father she deserves. Give me the wisdom to listen when she speaks. And in the morning, they would wake up and do it all again. Marcus making breakfast. Rosie packing her backpack, name tag tucked safely inside. The Harley rumbling to life. 2 squeezes, meaning she was ready. The ride to school. The goodbye. The watching her walk away. All of it normal. All of it precious. All of it built on the foundation of trust they'd constructed together, one conversation at a time, one moment of belief at a time. Years would pass. Rosie would grow. She would graduate high school, go to college, maybe have children of her own someday. And when she did, she would teach them the same lessons Marcus had taught her. Trust your voice. Tell someone when something feels wrong. Keep telling until someone listens. Because some lessons once learned echo across generations, and some voices once heard never stop speaking. Marcus never forgot that Wednesday morning when his daughter called from the school office with fear in her voice and trust that he would believe her. He kept the yellow name tag in his desk drawer next to the letter he had written for Rosie's 18th birthday and the box of letters from parents across 6 states. Reminders that the smallest voice in the room had changed everything, and that a father's greatest gift to his child wasn't protection from every danger. It was the courage to believe her when she said something felt wrong. Because in the end, that's what saved Rosie. Not luck, not chance, not fate, just a father who'd learned to listen, and a daughter brave enough to speak.